Welcome to your key discovery point. I am Brett Burney from Nextpoint, joined by Doug Austin of eDiscovery. Today, Legal Week 2026 happened last week in the new location of the Javits Center, Doug. And your Apple Watch was very happy with you. My watch was happy with me too. Lots and lots of steps last week.
Indeed, we're talking about my write-up from last Friday,
Look at those
and
rings.
really, yeah, look at
That's
those
great.
rings, and those were my Tuesday rings, which included me attending four events in the evening, so I was all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, usually when we're talking about Legal Week, where it's the same old location, the New York Midtown Hilton, which it's been for
Right?
decades. This was truly a new location at the Javits Center. There was good and bad to it. I think I think the Javits Center or the North Javits Center, we're not big enough for anywhere big enough for the whole Javits Center,
Right.
but it was, I mean, it's truly a proper convention hall. And if any place can make about 6,000 plus attendees look small, that place can
That's
because
right.
it really seemed very roomy, and what have you. There were some challenges. The meeting rooms were not really fully rooms, and sometimes that could make it difficult to have a quiet meeting. A lot of people pointed out how it was great to have the sun streaming through, but
Yes.
I
Windows.
sat in one of the sunny areas one day and it got a little hot. So there's a down, kind of a good and bad to that. And then the escalators is if you're not doing enough walking, if you're taking escalators, you go up to the third floor, walk over, go up to the fourth floor, walk over, go up to the fifth floor. So, those were some challenges. But the biggest challenge was the location of the venue, which I
Yep.
think, a lot of people like me tried to get a hotel as close as they could, which was still half a mile away. So that's like a 12 to 15-minute walk. At least the weather was good most of the days. So that was, that
Right.
helped. But any, offsite events, I did a group lunch one day that was basically took 2 hours, a tough, long commitment in the middle of a day like that.
Right.
Even Hudson Yards is a 12 to 15-minute walk. So, and it's supposed to be close in comparison. So, so that's one of the challenges. I think we all knew that was going to be a challenge, and I think we're learning to kind of deal with it. Obviously, one of the things that I pointed out in the post is that, on Tuesday I took nearly 19,000 steps. I walked
Wow.
7.93 miles. I'm sure that's pretty common compared to others as well. I actually added up my miles for the 4 days, and it was 24.14. Of course,
What?
yeah, yeah, of course. I know. I like walked a marathon last week. Although I will say that probably a mile of that is looking for my bad bag in the Houston airport when they sent it through the wrong carousel. So that was
Wow.
that. Maybe more like 23 or so. But
Okay. Well,
one of the things I think, yeah, and the item in red that I'm really starting to try to promote here is that in talking to a couple of people, they said, "Oh, I still stayed in Times Square or Midtown,
right.
right next to the number seven train line. Popped in the subway, boom, right down there, a couple of stops. It was easy, and I think that just made so much sense to me. So next year, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm
Yeah.
going to stay at a hotel along, near one of those subway stops on the number seven train line. And I'm also kind of pushing the idea that organizations who are doing these offsite networking events should have them in those locations, in locations near
Good
the
point.
same train line subway stations as well, because I think that would be so much easier than walking 12, 15, 20 minutes to an event when you can
Yeah.
just really pop into the subway right there at the Javits, a couple of stops up, walk a block or two, and you're there. So that's definitely one of the things that might be something we'll hopefully see some traction on next year. We
I
do
know.
have a hotel. Oh,
Yeah. I
sorry.
was just gonna say one of the proponents of that was Judge Peck, right? I remember because,
Right,
of course, Judge Peck lives there in the city, and
right.
I remember I mentioned to him about. I think the way I described it in my blog post that I walked through a disheveled, concrete-laden exercise in construction, navigating frustration. It was just crazy walking to that place. But he looked at me and he's like, why don't you just take this the 7 train? It's like, and in
Right.
fact, I think in one of your first crowdsourced posts, which you always do such a great job of, Doug, I think Judge Peck, he mentioned in here, he's like, right, just take
Right.
the
Yeah.
7 train.
His,
It's just so much easier. So I'm glad to see you're picking up on that, and that
yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that'll be a better way to go.
Right. Yeah. His comment
Here it
is the
is.
last one
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So he pointed out a couple of downsides, but he said, "Hey, take the 7 train and from 42nd Street makes perfect sense. Or you
Yeah.
could even be another." You could even be another, a stop or two up the road, and even actually be in Midtown.
Right. Right.
So yeah, he
Yeah,
pointed that out.
once you got to the Javits Center, it was great. I mean, I think to your point, what we were saying, I was saying, like, I even had this little video that law.com recorded of me, and I'm like, there's windows. I mean, just look at that, the light coming in.
Right.
It was nice. I felt like, there's a few things that you and Bob Ambrogi and others have pointed out, Steve Embry too, like the meeting spaces weren't so great. Like there could have been more places to sit. I've heard people talk about that. But once he got to the actual location, I felt it was pretty good. It was just getting there. That was just a little bit of a. I didn't know there was going to be that much construction. I mean, apparently they're making a whole new bus terminal there at the Port Authority, and there's just construction everywhere, and so you have to like jump across different streets and everything, and it's just a little bit of a mess. There was even, I don't know if you noticed it, there's a stable, a horse stable, a literal horse stable, like right there across the street for all of the carriages that go.
My nose noticed it too. So yeah,
and I don't want to get rid of the horses, but it's just there's a lot to navigate around there.
There is, and I'm there now. They are building a hotel, which could be built for it could be completed by next year. Don't know for sure.
Okay.
That could help. But I also suspect that hotel is going to be pretty expensive. So, it may not be necessarily a place that, a lot of us can stay.
Right,
so I think there's got to be options. So I still think, trying to stay near the 7 train line, try to have events near the 7 train line makes a lot of sense and can hopefully maybe, nullify some of those location challenges.
Now, I know you were really busy, but real quick, what did you hear generally about the content of the sessions this year? I mean, AI was just everywhere. Like you could not get away from it, whether it was session titles or exhibitor booths or anything like that. But we knew that going in. In fact, you and I talked about your word cloud, right, a few weeks ago. And of course, AI was the biggest word that was in there. But generally, what did you get? What was your takeaway from the content?
Well, and this is why I said, the topics were kind of maybe, the second most important thing to talk about since the venue was so, so different. And the topics were so predictable. It was AI everywhere. Agentic AI was a major part of that discussion. I mean, I know that appeared 35, the word agentic appeared 35 times in the word cloud, but I mean, it was even talked about more than that. And of course, we talked about when we talked about the word cloud, how eDiscovery was less included. And that meant that, topics like the modern data challenges and things like that weren't talked about as much, which I hated to see. So, I'd like to see more of that next year, but I doubt we will because nothing moves the needle like AI. I'm sure AI will continue to be the dominant topic. At the conference. But, I also had, I think that this was probably one of the shows where I was really able to sit with folks and talk about the technology and kind of see some of the things that we're starting to see and, getting to a point where people are standardizing their platform to just say include AI as part of their standard platform, which I think is an important step. I think that we're really starting to get to that point where more people are going to use it most of the time. Next year, maybe we'll have a lot more real world, stories about, people's experiences with them. We're starting to see those. Hopefully we'll see quite a bit more of those, going forward.
And I think that was reflected again. You always do such a great job of crowdsourcing observations from folks in the industry, and your first post went up today. And I think that was what you were just talking about there was highlighted here. Like there were several people that made a comment about the fact that they really appreciated hearing some practical applications of AI. In fact, I
Right.
did too. I posted my reflections at nextpoint.com at our blog, and along with some images and pictures here. Some of these sessions were really good. I know Phil Weldon, you had him as part of your crowdsourced list, and he did an interesting session called the AI Escape Room. But it was it's just really good to hear. He's in the thick of it as far as it just making sure that attorneys are actually using some of these technologies or observing how to best use it. There was another great session just quickly that Judge Peck was or judging. Really, it was.
Right.
AI prompts, and one side was talking about how they were using the prompts. They wanted the prompts that one side was using to be produced, and the other side was like, no, that's more work product. But this is something that I predict will come up sometime in the near future as far as what a judge has to moderate a little bit. And it was just great to see, because obviously Judge Peck is very, very knowledgeable in all of this, and it was just it was good to kind of watch the parties and the arguments and how it's going. Then he stopped it and was like, let's talk through this, that kind of a thing. But to me, like you said, it was very predictable, a lot of the sessions and the content there. But there were little nuggets just placed throughout that I could hear, and I would perk up when people would talk about how they've actually been using it. Like Robert Keeling, for example, was another panel, now at Redgrave, and just they've actually been experimenting with this. They have a little bit more freedom that they can, have maybe data that they use for an actual matter, then they can use it to experiment with some others, along with permission and everything. But just those kind of things to me are what's always the valuable takeaways from something like Legalweek.
Yeah, absolutely. And the content is great, and those sessions you mentioned were terrific. The deepfake session that you and I saw you there at that one
Yes.
was another really good one. So the content as usual was really top notch. I just like to see maybe a little more diversity in the topics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, one of the other aspects of Legalweek is it's the largest legal tech conference of the year. So it does give you an opportunity to really connect with people that other conferences may not give you as much about. One thing I'll mention real quick. A
Yeah.
couple of things I think are notable for next year. They're already saying save the date March 1st through 3rd next year, which is 3 days instead of 4,
Yeah, I noticed
which is
that.
interesting. I don't know if that means they couldn't get a 4-day commitment out of the North Javits or what. But that'll be interesting given that you have exhibitors who may be one less day to exhibit. Will that what will the impact there be? I mentioned the
Right.
hotel next to the Javits, and then I also was told by a couple of people that ALM or that the conference, I don't know if it's ALM dictated or Javits dictated, plans to move the meeting rooms down to the 3rd floor where next to the exhibit hall, which is going to, I think, make it much tougher to hear those meetings. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and to be clear, just in case people, these are like meetings that a vendor set up, and then they have a kind of a rolling
Correct.
rotation of people
Right.
coming in. It's not the session rooms. The session rooms I thought were actually pretty good, and some
The
of them,
session rooms
again,
were,
some even had windows in them. But the session rooms were good. But these are like the specific media rooms, and you were one of many that I heard complained about that, because you go into a meeting, you want it to be a little bit more intimate. You have a conversation, and yeah, they were just kind of curtains there that didn't really help that much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they had a section up on the 5th floor with a bunch of meeting areas that were
Areas.
meeting rooms separated by curtains. I had a couple of meetings in there and it was pretty quiet. And I don't think there was a meeting next to us at the time.
Okay.
But you can imagine how, you would be, there's certain things you want to discuss, a little bit more privately. That's not really an environment to do
Right.
that in. And it could be, if you have a lot of activity, that can make it tough to. Now, the exhibit hall is sometimes, not sometimes fairly quiet, like during sessions and what have you. So that could be a better time for meetings, but we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping that there will be a better way of handling it. I know that Legal Week sent out emails saying, give us your feedback. So, I haven't done that yet, so I need to do that.
All kinds of great reporting, Doug. Always appreciate you doing this. In fact, you even have a nice little video interview here with Greg Bufithis, who's been around in the industry for a long time. I just thought that was great that you posted. I'm glad. I know you're going to post at least one more crowdsourced Legal Week observations, maybe two more, because I know a lot of people
Two more.
like to get, a lot of people like to get those thoughts in, and I appreciate you including me as well. And like I said, I just had some pictures and video that I had posted on nextpoint.com as well. For anyone that wasn't able to make Legal Week, but there's always next year. And I have to say, I'm more leaning toward the positive side of things. I went in thinking I was going to have a lot to complain about. There's always complaints, especially when it's a new location, but I thought overall it was good. It was just great to be able to see so many people, which is really the reasons that I go these days, is just to be able to network and talk and kind of learn what a lot of companies are doing, from press releases and stuff like that. And I know your inbox is full as well. Anyway, always appreciate you talking, Doug. Thanks, and we'll talk with you next time.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everybody.